And what if the most inaccessible man in the country fell in love with someone who couldn't even finish the interview? The morning at Aurora Prime Hotel began in silence, under the discreet leadership of Raphael Montero. From the 38th floor, he observed the city like someone who keeps his distance from the world. To the employees, Raphael was almost a legend. According to rumors, he was a virgin at 30, incapable of trusting or giving himself to any woman, but he didn't see himself that way. Deep down, he knew that the armor built around his own heart did not come from arrogance, but from fear. Fear of being used. Fear of offering what he had most genuine to someone interested only in the Montero surname. The hotel reception was busy that day, with an event for new investors. And in the middle of all that, Yanara arrived with her hair tied in a bun and a backpack on her shoulders, wearing a simple but well-pressed dress. It was her first day away from her hometown. She arrived to try for a position as a housekeeper, and little did she know that she was about to be evaluated personally by the CEO himself. She walked in with firm steps, trying to hide her nervousness. While filling out an admission form, she heard the giggles of the receptionist. "She won't last a week," whispered one. "She doesn't even know who's going to interview her," said another. But Yanara ignored it. She had faced worse. She grew up hearing that she needed to lower her head, be discreet, accept little. But inside, there was a silent strength that never allowed her to settle for little. Upstairs, Raphael was watching the security cameras. It was an old habit. He liked to see the employees moving around. He felt that it kept him in control of everything. When the monitor showed the new candidate sitting at the reception, he stopped. He didn't know why, but there was something about that young woman. Maybe it was the tired expression, the eyes trying not to fall apart, or the way she fixed her hair every time she took a deep breath. He didn't look away until she disappeared from the screen. Minutes later, she was taken to the interview room. Raphael didn't usually interview anyone of that hierarchical level personally, but that day, he decided he would make an exception. When she entered, the difference between worlds was striking. He, in a tailored gray suit, his gaze calculated and unmoving. She, with clean but worn shoes, holding her resume as if it were a shield. "Yanara, right?" he said, with no emotion in his voice. "Yes, sir," she replied, firm, but with her heart beating so hard she thought he would hear it. "Why do you want to work here?" he asked, directly. She took a breath. "Because I need to, but also because I want to. It's different from where I come from. This place seems like, a place where I can grow." He stared at her for long seconds. There was something disarmed about her. No effort to impress him, no attempt at flattery, just sincerity. That unsettled him. But before he could continue the interview, the door opened abruptly. Clara, one of the oldest employees at the reception, entered without knocking. "Sorry, Raphael. I thought you were alone." She cast a quick glance at Yanara, then smiled sideways. "I just came to remind you about our dinner with the executives later. Don't be late." He didn't even respond. He just gave a slight nod, still looking at Yanara, who seemed visibly uncomfortable with the interruption. Clara left, but the air in the room was already different. Yanara stood up slowly. "I think I can come back another time, if you'd prefer." But he interrupted her. "No. Stay. I want to know more about you." She sat down again, surprised. "About me? I don't have much to say. I'm from Paracatu. I helped my mother with cleaning since I was 12. And this is the first time I've entered a building with mirrored elevators." He sketched what could be the beginning of a smile. That's already more than most people here would dare to tell. When she left the interview room, Yanara could barely process what had just happened. Her heart still racing, her hands cold, and a doubt hammering inside. Why was that man looking at her that way? Raphael wasn't just handsome, he was enigmatic. The kind of man who carries the weight of the world on his shoulders and refuses to let it fall. As she went down the elevator, she crossed paths again with Clara, the same one who had invaded the room earlier. This time, the look was different, cutting, with a smile that felt more like a threat. "Can you really see this place as something that belongs to you?" she asked, adjusting her badge arrogantly. Yanara answered with a short smile. "I just need one chance," and I went home. The next day she received a call informing her that she had been approved in the interview and was summoned for training. She would start as a housekeeping assistant on the executive floor. It was a difficult, demanding position with an international standard of service, and it was there, among perfectly aligned sheets and towels that she crossed paths with Raphael again, not as CEO, but as a guest. He often stayed in one of the penthouse rooms when he wanted to escape the world. Even though he had his own triplex in another neighborhood, the first time she saw him outside the interview room, he was wearing a simple black t-shirt, no blazer, his hair a little messy. She was with a laundry cart and didn't know whether to stop, ask for permission, or turn her back. But he spoke first. "I asked not to have my room disturbed today." She swallowed hard. "Sorry, sir. I just came to collect the used clothes from 3803. You're new, right?" "Yes, but I'm already learning the way to the clean towels." He smiled with the corner of his lips. "You've been learning fast." But while Raphael showed this rare kind of kindness toward Yanara, other female employees on the team seemed increasingly to present. Camila, from the spa, bumped into him in the elevator all the time. Julia, from marketing, always showed up with reports he hadn't even requested. And Clara, always Clara, made a point of reminding everyone out loud that some people here know what the boss likes. There were days when Yanara felt the air grow heavy. A group of female employees whispered about her every time she passed through the cafeteria. "Looks like the boss looked at her in the hallway. She doesn't even have a college degree. This is just to provoke. He gets tired quickly." But it wasn't just gossip. They started changing her schedules without notice, making items from her cart disappear, pointing out non-existent errors in the reports. She tried to stay strong. On the night of the investors' cocktail party, Raphael arrived early at the reception. He wore a dark blue suit and a tie that, according to rumors, was a gift from a high society woman he never acknowledged. He was alone, as always, but his eyes seemed to be searching for something or someone. And then, unintentionally, he saw Yanara running hurriedly through the back, trying to hide a tear in her uniform blouse. She had accidentally spilled wine while replenishing the glasses. A small mistake, but enough for Julia to shout in front of everyone. Another blunder from the housekeeper. Raphael watched the scene from a distance. He said nothing. He just observed. But at the end of the event, when everyone was already dispersing, he approached her for the first time with no one around and said, "If you want, I'll pay for a new uniform myself." She hesitated, but replied with a tired smile, "No need, I'll sew it." The next morning, Yanara arrived at the hotel before 7, crossing the reception with firm steps but a tight heart. The interview had just been made official, but the atmosphere in the corridors was already beginning to feel heavy. Some of the more senior employees exchanged discreet looks, others didn't hide their discomfort. It was as if her freshly pressed uniform and the folder of documents in her hand were a threat. She headed to the locker room, tied her hair back, checked the provisional badge, and took a deep breath. That day, she would officially begin as a housekeeping assistant. She still didn't know that. Just a few doors ahead, the hotel CEO had already asked about her. While she organized the supplies on the cleaning cart, one of the employees from the department, with a cold look and a polite smile, approached. The new favorite arrived early, she said in a low tone, but loud enough to be heard. Yanara chose to ignore it. She had learned early on that silence was the safest shield when the environment wasn't hers. Around 10 a.m., the management intercom rang. They asked her to take extra towels to room 38. She hesitated when she looked at the number. It was the presidential suite, the same one where, days earlier, she had been personally interviewed by Raphael. She went up with the cart, not knowing what to expect. When she knocked on the door, he answered immediately. He was without the blazer, with his shirt open at the collar and his hair slightly disheveled. "I thought you were in the morning training," he said, without preamble. "They changed the schedule. They put me straight on the room rotation." He made a subtle gesture, allowing her to enter. Yanara walked to the suite's bathroom and replaced the towels with precision. When she came out, she noticed his gaze resting on her movements. "Is everything okay?" she asked. "It is." He took a second to finish. "I just wanted you to know that. It's not common for me to interview anyone, but that day, there was something in your eyes that made me want to hear your story to the end." Yanara looked away. She was beginning to understand why so many hotel employees treated Raphael like a mix of legend and obsession. Later, in the cafeteria, She sat in a discreet corner to have lunch. Two employees approached the neighboring table, laughing loudly. "You know that one over there?" one said, pointing with her chin. She was lucky enough to be seen by him. "Or maybe she was smart enough to get attention," the other replied. "Maybe the untouchable saint isn't so untouchable after all." Yanara felt her face burn, but she remained silent. She didn't want to fuel rumors. She just wanted to finish her shift in peace. At the end of the workday, close to 6 in the evening, Raphael passed through the service wing and saw her reorganizing the laundry cart alone. He stopped for a moment, watching from a distance. The other employees vanished from the corridors as if his presence emitted a silent order. "Still here?" he asked as he approached. "I'm finishing up. I wanted to leave everything ready for the morning shift. Some people work just to fulfill the schedule," he commented. "But you seem to work to deserve the place you're in." She smiled, but didn't reply. She was about to collect the last sheets when one of the more senior employees appeared suddenly and accidentally tripped over the cart, knocking part of the load to the floor. "Oh, what a disaster," she said ironically. "I hope the boss doesn't think you're disorganized." Raphael didn't answer. He walked up to the employee and spoke low, firmly. "One more attitude like that, and you'll be out of here." The woman swallowed hard and left without looking at anyone. Yanara, surprised, stood still with the sheets still in her hands. "Thank you," she finally said. The next morning, Raphael arrived at the hotel earlier than usual. He passed through the reception, ignored the subtle attempts at approach from the female employees, and went straight up to the executive wing. He had a single image in mind, the housekeeper he had defended at the end of the previous shift. It was strange for him. That kind of feeling was not part of his routine. 30 years old, an entire life dedicated to work, to perfection, to commanding everything. But Yanara's gaze, that he could no longer command. Meanwhile, in the service wing, Yanara was folding sheets beside Marta, one of the few employees who hadn't shown hostility since her arrival. "You know everyone is talking, right?" Marta commented in a low voice. "Talking about what?" "That the boss has never looked at anyone the way he looked at you. And a lot of people are bothered by that." Yanara smiled, but it was a nervous smile. She didn't want to believe that a man like Raphael, cold and rich, could really be looking at her in a different way. And even if he was, what did that mean? That afternoon, she was assigned to clean the upper corridors, precisely where the CEO's main office was located. While she cleaned the glass windows of the executive lobby, she heard footsteps approaching. It was Larissa, the administrative assistant to the board, an elegant woman with a confident stride, who never missed an opportunity to remind others of her position. "Are you working overtime in this wing now, newbie?" she asked, stopping beside her. "They told me to clean this sector today," Yanara replied calmly. "Be careful not to get lost around here. Sometimes you think you're going up, but you fall from a nasty height." Yanara didn't answer. She continued her work, even feeling the weight of the words. At the end of the shift, when everyone was already leaving, Raphael saw her alone near the service elevator. She had her gloves in her hands, her face slightly sweaty, but her gaze was serene. "Yanara," he called, almost in a whisper. She turned around, surprised. "Yes, sir. Tonight, the hotel will be hosting a private event in the main restaurant. I need someone I can trust behind the scenes. It's not your job, but I want you there. I trust your attentive eye." She hesitated. "If that won't cause problems, there are already people bothered anyway." He said it without irony, but with a disconcerting sincerity. "Let's not pretend there isn't something different here." She nodded, and for the first time, he smiled a real smile. Not rehearsed, not social. Later, at the event, the hall was packed with business people, politicians, and public figures. Yanara stayed behind the scenes, organizing dishes and discreetly supervising the support staff. At one point during a break, Raphael quietly entered the pantry where she was alone. "Is everything under control?" he asked. "Yes, it is. Can I tell you a secret?" She turned slowly, her eyes attentive. "You can. This place, all this luxury, never made me feel alive." And now, he looked at her for long seconds. "Now, there are days when I forget to close the office door because I keep waiting to see you walk by." Yanara looked away, her heart racing. The sound of footsteps coming from the corridor interrupted them, and he left quickly, as if nothing had happened. The day after the event, Raphael arrived at the building with a serene expression, but his gaze was more attentive than ever. He knew that his closeness to Yanara was already being talked about in the corridors. But for the first time in years, he didn't care about what was expected of him. It was as if everything he had lived before was losing its meaning, and what he had not yet lived with her was starting to feel urgent. Meanwhile, in the cleaning staff's pantry, Yanara tried to act normally, but his gesture from the night before, the way he approached her, the way he said that about waiting to see her pass by the door, was still throbbing in her thoughts. Never had a man spoken to her like that. Never a man like him. "Be careful, okay?" whispered Patricia, one of the more senior housekeepers, leaning in beside her. "Do you think those backstage conversations don't reach the board? Everyone here has eyes and a tongue." Yanara didn't respond, but she felt the chill of the threat embedded in that sentence. Soon after, while delivering a cart with linens to the suite area, she was surprised by Larissa standing alone in the corridor, arms crossed. Funny, right? So many people with resumes, postgraduate degrees, years of hotel experience, and you're the one the boss notices, she said, smiling without humor. Must be a rare talent. Yanara bit her tongue. She just wanted to work in peace. But it was as if the entire hotel had turned against her since Raphael had looked at her differently. At the end of the shift, Raphael called her up to the executive floor. "I heard they've been putting pressure on you," he began seriously, looking out the window before turning his face to her. "It shouldn't be like that. No one has the right to diminish you because of me." She lowered her eyes, feeling her chest tighten. "I just want to do my job, sir. I don't want to be a problem." "You never were, and you never will be." He took a deep breath. "But maybe I need to be honest about what's happening here, with me." Before he could continue, the door was abruptly opened by Beatrice, the hotel's general manager. "Raphael, the meeting with the board has already started. They're all waiting for you." Her tone was respectful, but her gaze fell on Yanara like a cold cut. "I'll be right there," he replied firmly. Beatrice left without hiding her discomfort, and Raphael closed the door carefully. He looked back at Yanara calmer. "There are things I never needed to explain. Until now." He took a step forward. "I have never been involved with anyone in this hotel. I never felt the urge. Not even curiosity. My world was always corporate." She raised her eyes, confused but touched. "And now, I can no longer act as if this hasn't happened." The walkie-talkie in her pocket beeped. They needed her in the back wing. "I need to go," she said softly. "I know," he replied, but before she left, he reached out, took her hand, and held it tightly for a moment. Yanara went down the service stairs with her heart racing. The touch of his hand was still there, present as if it had left a mark on her skin. It wasn't just the gesture, it was the way he had looked at her before, as if, for a moment, he had forgotten he was the most powerful man in that place, as if he saw her only as a woman and not as a subordinate or a piece in the puzzle of an empire. She returned to work with her mind far away, stumbling over her own thoughts. She tried to focus on the tasks, replacing towels, organizing welcome kits, aligning the pillows as she had learned, but the discreet scent of his perfume seemed to have followed her through the corridors. She felt ashamed of what she was feeling. It was dangerous and unlikely, but it was happening. In the executive offices, Raphael was also not having his best day. The meeting with the board was a parade of numbers and growth projections, subjects that, until recently, he mastered with surgical precision, but now his attention drifted. Not out of carelessness, but because, for the first time, there was a reality that did not fit into charts or contracts, his heart racing every time he saw that slender, brave housekeeper pass by at the end of the meeting. While the board members were dispersing, Larissa came closer than necessary, as she had done other times. She placed her hand on his arm and made a deliberately ambiguous comment. "The hotel does much better when you're more light, Raphael. I imagine someone has helped with that, hasn't she?" He subtly pulled away, without responding, and headed for the elevator. In the basement laundry, Yanara unintentionally overheard parts of conversations between other employees. "They say he's really enchanted, that he even changed his lunch schedule just to run into her in the cafeteria. And did you see Larissa today?" She's eating herself up with jealousy. Yanara pretended not to listen, but inside the anguish grew. She knew that this was creating cracks in the corridors. People who didn't even know her were already taking sides, and she had done anything other than be who she was. That night, before ending her shift, she passed by the executive pantry to return a forgotten tray. It was empty, or so she thought. As she entered, Raphael appeared from behind the half-open door, holding a folder. "I thought I wouldn't see you anymore today," he said, with a tone that seemed to want to say more than it said. "I just came to return this. I was already leaving." "Wait a bit, just one more minute," he asked, and there was something in his eyes that made her stop. "Silence, I don't want to put you in a difficult situation, neither at work nor outside of it, but I also don't want to pretend that you don't affect me. I've tried, I couldn't." She looked away, her hands trembling. "I don't know if this is right. In here, everything seems wrong. In here inside the hotel, or in here inside your heart?" She swallowed hard. She didn't have a ready answer. Raphael took a step closer. He didn't touch her, but the proximity was enough to make her feel she was on the edge of something irreversible. "I waited 30 years to feel something like this," he whispered, "and I never expected it to be for someone holding a tray in her hand. But it's you. Precisely you." Her walkie-talkie beeped again, interrupting the moment. "I need to go." "I know," he said. As Yanara disappeared down the corridor, Raphael stood there for a few seconds, watching the door close behind her with the same feeling as a train he had let pass, not knowing if there would be another. He wasn't naive. He knew he was stepping onto unstable ground, but he also knew how to recognize when something was real. And what he felt for that housekeeper he barely knew was something he had never felt in 30 years. The next day, Yanara arrived earlier than usual. Not out of obligation, but because her heart wouldn't let her sleep properly. She could still feel the warmth of his voice, the words echoing in her mind. She was afraid. Afraid of getting carried away, of getting hurt, of losing the little she had achieved there. But she also felt something she couldn't name, a desire to see him again, even if only from afar. As she discreetly passed through the lobby, a group of employees gathered around the staff breakfast. Larissa, as always, was at the center of attention. Well-dressed, made up, and with that look of someone who already knows too much. "Did you see the new little housekeeper?" she let out, without even looking in Yanara's direction. "Looks like she has charms that even HR couldn't predict." Quiet laughter spread through the group, but Yanara kept her head held high. She pretended not to hear, but it hurt. The contempt disguised as a joke, the looks that followed her as she walked by, and more than that, the certainty that her name was on the right lips for the wrong reason. In the middle of the morning, Raphael appeared unexpectedly in the executive room's wing, clipboard in hand, as if he were there only for an inspection. But his eyes, those were searching for just one face, and when he saw her leaving one of the rooms with a set of towels in her arms, he stopped in the corridor. "I need to talk to you, Yanara, but no rush. When you can?" She hesitated, looked around. The corridors were busy. "We can go up to the executive pantry." "In 5 minutes," she suggested, as if trying to seem more in control than she really was. "I'll meet you there." In the pantry, the conversation was short, but every word carried a weight that both knew they were about to release. "I know this is strange for you," he said, "but for me too. I've never felt this way about anyone. I'm a man who didn't give in to distractions. I never let myself be carried away by impulse. But with you, it's different. It makes me want to know what makes you laugh, what makes you cry, what makes you want to disappear sometimes." Yanara lowered her gaze. "And what if this is just a deviation in your routine? Just a moment you go back to your world, and I stay in mine." He stepped closer, once again, without touching her. "And what if it's the opposite? What if you're the first thing that makes me want to abandon everything for love?" They looked at each other for seconds that felt like hours. And this Chimi, it was she who looked away. But she didn't run. She just took a deep breath. Before any gesture could be made, the door opened abruptly. Larissa walked in without knocking, a clipboard in her hands and an irritating smile. She stopped when she saw the two of them. "Oh, I didn't know you were busy, Raphael. The atmosphere froze in the air. Raphael straightened his posture. Yanara stepped back. We were talking about tray standardization, he said firmly, as if he were speaking to a client. Thank you, Yanara. You can leave it right here. She understood the message. She left with hurried steps, but inside her, something was breaking. Maybe he still wasn't ready, or maybe he never had been. The next day, Yanara arrived at the hotel with her heart still out of rhythm. The previous night had left a trail of sensations she couldn't name. The almost kiss, his eyes fixed on hers, Larissa's presence shattering everything like a mirror hit by a stone. But there was something even more disturbing than the interrupted moment, the doubt of whether he would approach her again. While organizing sheets in the laundry room, she heard her name echo over the internal radio. The coordinator wanted to see her on the second floor. When she arrived there, she was surprised not by the coordinator, but by Raphael. He was standing in the corridor, as if he already knew she would come. He wore an impeccable dark suit, but his eyes were marked by discreet dark circles. He looked like he had slept all, and there was something in the way he watched her that was no longer restraint, it was certainty. Do you have a few minutes? He asked, his voice lower than usual. I want to show you something. She nodded, wary. She followed him to the elevator without exchanging a word, and the silence between them seemed to say more than any dialogue. When the doors closed, he turned slowly. Yesterday, I didn't know how to react. I hid behind a professional excuse because it was easier than admitting that you dismantled me. Yanara stared at him, surprised. The sincerity in his voice was raw. I have never fallen in love before. I never wanted to know. I never needed to. But since you arrived, it has been impossible to ignore. She swallowed hard. She wanted to believe, but she knew the weight that a feeling like that could bring. Do you know what you're saying, Raphael? I'm just a housekeeper, and you're the man who has everything under control. This here, she pointed to the space between them, could just be a whim of your loneliness. He stepped closer, his eyes shining. And what if it's the opposite? What if it is the first step for me to lose control over something that is truly worth it? The elevator stopped at the executive terrace, a space rarely used. He guided her to a glass-walled room with a view of the sea where there was a table set with 2 glasses. It was a discreet and reserved environment. I asked them to prepare this yesterday because I needed this moment not to be interrupted again. She remained silent, and Raphael stepped closer and said, You're not just a housekeeper. You're the first name I thought of today when I woke up, and you were the last one yesterday before I went to sleep. She looked away, feeling her chest tighten. But before she could respond, the door opened forcefully. It was Larissa. Raphael, the director from headquarters, arrived without notice. He's looking for you. Her gaze passed over Yanara like a blade. The tension in the air was visible. Raphael took a deep breath, but didn't lose his composure. Tell him I'll be there in 5 minutes. Larissa hesitated, visibly displeased, and left. Yanara then took a step back, confused. Maybe it's better for you to go. Raphael slowly shook his head. Not now. No. She bit her lip, her face flushed with embarrassment. I don't know how to deal with this. He took a step closer. Then let me learn for both of us. Yanara stood there, frozen in front of him, her hands slightly trembling, her heart racing, her face hot with embarrassment. Raphael took another step, moving closer slowly, and then he gently touched her face. He took a deep breath, and then he kissed her and felt his entire body shiver with love for Yanara. And at the exact moment their lips met, something inside her fell apart. It was as if all the fear of being just another one, of being forgotten, of being used, dissolved for an instant in the softness of that kiss. They pulled away slowly, their eyes still locked on each other, and Yanara whispered in a more vulnerable tone than she would have liked. I don't know what this means to you. For me, he replied, his voice low and firm. It means everything. I have never lived, and I don't want to go through this life without you anymore. Yanara bit her lip, taking a deep breath. She wanted to believe, but everything there was new, painfully beautiful, uncomfortable, because it was so unlikely. "I'm afraid, Raphael, and I have you now," he said. "And if this is a mistake, let it be the first mistake I will never regret." She smiled, a small smile from someone who still carries 1,000 defenses inside, but can no longer pretend that everything is in the same place as before. That was when the door suddenly opened. 2 decoration staff members entered carrying boxers with flowers and vases. Time froze. Raphael and Yanara were still too close. The blush on her face, his protective posture, their crossed gazes, everything revealed that there was something there, something that could no longer be hidden for long. The employees looked at each other, saying nothing. They simply left the boxers on the table and walked out in silence, leaving behind an atmosphere cut by an invisible thread of tension. Yanara stepped back, her heart pounding. Raphael watched her with the eyes of someone who had already made a decision. She broke the silence with an insecure whisper. "This is going to cause trouble. Maybe, but this time, I won't run away." The silence between them was interrupted by a soft knock on the door. A reception employee appeared discreetly, informing them that the awards ceremony in the main hall had already begun and that the CEO's absence was being noticed. Raphael thanked him with a nod and turned back to Yanara, still holding her hands in his. "Do you think you can go with me?" he asked. She hesitated. Her face was still burning from the recent kiss. Her eyes were watery, her voice stuck in her throat, but for some reason she herself still didn't understand. She nodded. "I'll go with you," she said softly. They walked together through the corridors, side by side, without letting go of each other's hands. The insecurity that had once paralyzed her now seemed to retreat one step, perhaps because of his touch, or because of the decision he had made not to run away anymore. When they reached the main hall, the looks turned toward them like a silent wave. And that was when everything began to happen faster than she could control. Nicole was at the center of the event, radiant, surrounded by other managers. When she saw Raphael approaching with Yanara by his side, her smile froze. The murmur began small, discreet, but grew with every step they took together. The CEO, always cold, always distant, was now walking hand in hand with an intern. It was as if protocol itself had been torn apart in public. Raphael did not hesitate. He climbed onto the small stage of the gathering, and even before the master of ceremonies could take back the microphone, he made a subtle gesture asking for the floor. He took the microphone calmly and looked directly into Yanara's eyes, who was standing at the side of the stage, confused, frightened, but there, present, seen. "Good evening, everyone," he began. "I know this isn't on tonight's agenda, but there are things that can no longer be postponed." Silence. Even the waiters stopped moving. For a long time, I hid behind titles, protocols, an image that I was taught to see as synonymous with leadership. But today, for the first time, I choose not to lead with my head. I choose to lead with truth. The words were calm, measured, but they crossed the room like an emotional thunderclap. "This woman here," he continued, pointing directly at Yanara, "is not just an intern. She is the person who reminded me that feeling is not weakness, that trusting is not a mistake, that loving is not a distraction." Nicole let out a muffled laugh, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing, but no one laughed with her. "From today on, Manosihi concluded, I publicly assume that I am with her, that I will build something with her, that I choose in front of everyone this woman to be part of my life, not as an employee, but as my future wife and the mother of my children." The impact was immediate. Nicole went pale. The glass in her hand fell instantly, and her rehearsed smile dissolved into contained rage. A murmur cut through the hall like a windstorm, some trying to disguise the shock, others exchanging incredulous looks. Yanara was still there, standing at the side of the stage with her eyes wide open, but then he slowly extended his hand and held hers firmly. The other hand went to her waist, pulling her closer with gentleness. Yanara could barely breathe, and then he kissed her, there, in front of everyone. Without fear, others stepped back uncomfortably, but no one could say they hadn't seen it. No one could pretend it hadn't happened. The untouchable CEO, the man who for 30 years had never allowed himself to love, was now there, vulnerable and completely surrendered to the housekeeper. If at any point in this story your heart tightened, if you rooted for them, or even if you saw yourself in the pain of someone who is doubted by everyone but still chosen by love, this channel is for you. So, subscribe now, because there are still many stories like this. Strong, romantic, and unexpected, ready to truly touch you. And tell me here in the comments. Comment, "I receive this love," if this message spoke to you. This small gesture helps me know that I'm not alone telling these stories. Oh, and of course, leave a like if this couple won you over. And don't go anywhere. The next video is already on your screen. It's another intense, surprising story, and it might be your favorite yet. See you there.